We are going to go ahead and get into this. I will be taking questions at the end, but feel free as you have questions. I am a very fast talker, and I like to make sure that webinars are never boring. So we will be taking questions at the end, but go ahead and type them in as you think of them because I'm going to move on really quickly to other topics. The whole thing that we're talking about today is home performance. A lot of you might not have heard of what that is. Many of you are involved in the Georgetown University Energy Prize, of which we are a sponsor. So my organization specializes in diagnostics for homes, and that means single-family homes and also multifamily buildings. And when we work, we like to both teach our clients how this stuff works, clients being either consumers, architects, contractors, inspectors, whoever. We work in all different kind of trades, and we specialize in diagnostics for anything that we tested. And also, we like to tell the contractors that we're helping how to do the tests themselves. So some of you might be familiar with things like weatherization programs, which is a low-income program to help people get control over their home's energy bills. Now, we are not talking about energy bills today, and you will see why in a few minutes. This is a much bigger conversation than just saving some energy. Also, people are ambivalent about energy sometimes, so we will talk about that. This is one of the kind of things that probably a lot of you, if you're involved in the Georgetown University Energy Prize, are having to overcome is people's kind of reluctance to really take action on energy stuff. This conversation about home performance is your opportunity to go ahead and expand the conversation. The screen says let's get started. Hang on one second. Just a minute, everybody. We're having technical difficulties. Can you still hear me? Okay. You can hear me, but you're in listen-only mode. Yes, great. Okay, good. All right, I'm gonna go back and we're going to try this one more time. Okay, cool. So, like I was saying, everything is fine. We've got technology on our side. We are going to be expanding the conversation about energy efficiency so that it becomes a much bigger deal and you're able to reach more people, get more people activated. So I will tell you more about me as we go, but all of these pictures are me holding my precious equipment, which I love and I use every day. So here's me holding a bunch of the tools that I take into people's homes to help them get control over their buildings. What is this stuff? We can call this by its names. It's the infrared camera and the anemometer and the pressure gauge or the manometer and a carbon monoxide monitor that I wear 24 hours a day. You can talk about what's required by code or what would be used for solving specific solutions. But really, ultimately, all of this stuff and all of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you is at its heart not just about that. This stuff is about the ability to prove scientifically that this works and that doesn't. That is what my job entails day in and day out. It's testing things and finding out, ooh, this is the source of the problems that we're having. And the reason that this is so important is that all of us have homes. Whether or not we own them or live in an apartment or a giant mansion, we have homes and homes have problems. And what happens when you have a problem is that first thing, you generally call somebody who is absolutely not the right person to call. It's going to be like an HVAC contractor who you saw on a billboard, or a plumbing company that you saw will be on time every single time that they're out. These people are great. A lot of times you are misled by the fact that they are marketing to you. There are very high quality contractors out there and they know how to solve problems with diagnostics, but they often are not the ones that are marketing the loudest. Often there's going to be a referral that you're going to get instead. And these are the people that you need to find and connect with in your local cities to really get this thing moving. So if you want to prove that you got what you paid for or prove that you are better than the competition, this is how you do this. So there's no excuse anymore to saying, I don't know how to do diagnostics. Because for one reason, I wrote a book on all of the tests that you would want to run in any home. This field has been around for like 40 years. Everybody, by the way, let's go ahead and do this. Everybody raise your right hand. I can't see you, but I'm imagining that you are raising your right hand. And repeat after me. Sometimes I am an idiot. Doesn't that feel good? I always like to do that. At the beginning of when I'm getting into being technical, I like to remind myself that I come from being a piano player. I used to play piano for ballerinas for a living. And this field has been around for 40 years, but no one had written this book. And so I said, all right, fine. If nobody else is going to write it, I am going to write it. Because contractors need a step-by-step pictorial guide to doing all of the tests that they might be required to do. And the tests that we're going to start training homeowners when we go on the road to ask for. So everyone will be doing this eventually, and everybody needs to get on board earlier rather than later. You can preview this entire book at homeperformancebook.com. I wrote this myself. I self-publish it, so you can get it through homeperformancebook.com. And if anybody is interested in talking more about testing in general, that's where you can do it. There are also videos and a radio show, and I'm going to get into a lot more resources. But first thing you need to understand is how home performance works. What is it? And a lot of people will tell you, oh, it's about energy efficiency and air quality, or it's about this and that. And this is very ethereal stuff. I am a dummy. Like I said, sometimes I'm an idiot. I like to break stuff down. So this is the system that I use when I'm in somebody's house trying to explain to myself what is going on so that I can then explain it to the person that I'm working for. So let's start with this. There are 4 elements to home performance. The first one that most people think of is heat flow. If you ask most homeowners in your cities what they think they need in order to make their home more high performance or energy efficient or comfortable or whatever, they're generally going to say one of 2 things first. And I know this because I ask people all over the country. They're going to say, oh, more insulation for sure, and new windows. Both of these things are not what 99% of homeowners actually need to improve their homes. But that's okay, because at least they're thinking about heat flow. That's a good thing. They acknowledge that heat flow is a thing. And when I think about it as a bad thing, it's heat bleed. That's not what we want, right? Nobody likes that. The second thing on my list is airflow and pressure. These are 2 sides of the same coin. Where we have an airflow, you know you have a pressure. And where we have a pressure, we know we have an airflow. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about any science that you cannot use in your day-to-day life. Now, you can see that my list is getting more important as we go up. We're going 4, 3, 2, 1. The second thing on my list here, the second most important thing is moisture. Moisture is incredibly important for controlling the durability and the air quality of homes. Nothing is going to destroy a house better than moisture, unless it's a fire or a tornado, which is pretty extreme. And the number 1 thing on this list of 4 elements is air quality. If your home smells bad, if you have weird odors or condensation and your walls are wet and all kinds of air quality things are going wrong, nobody cares if it's energy efficient. And I would like to repeat that. No one cares about energy efficiency if the air quality is not good. By the way, as far as energy efficiency goes, while it is an important metric, because it is the only way for us to actually quantifiably measure how awesome a house is, in the performance kind of mode when we're tracking the bills over a long period of time. We have other ways of quantifying awesomeness, which I'm going to get to later, but energy efficiency will only be measured with the least important half of my list. Airflow and pressure and heat flow will go into factoring how energy efficient the home is. If I increase the moisture control or the air quality control in a house, I haven't done anything for energy efficiency. In fact, a lot of times what will happen is once I introduce a fresh air ventilation system, for example, which we're going to talk about, I actually increase the energy use, which is a penalty. So I would make it less energy efficient, but it makes it more controlled on the moisture and air quality side, and that's a good thing. So we want to make sure that we're clear. We are not just talking about energy efficiency. It is an aspect of home performance. There are 3 recommendations that I generally always will make on a new home or an older home. First thing is always air sealing. This is a problem because, number 1, most people don't realize this. They think that insulation and new windows are the number 1 thing that they should do. And the other thing is that once you install insulation, which is the second thing on my list, you can't go back and do air sealing, which is underneath the insulation. So we've got tons of examples of places where an energy efficiency program will come along and install a bunch of insulation in people's houses, and then we have to come along in the private market, which, by the way, I only work in the private market. I do not work with energy efficiency programs or publicly funded programs. All of my clients pay private market rates for this work, and this is a very doable business model. This is what we're going to be teaching contractors around the country. Once you have done the insulation, a private company will come along and scoop that insulation back out at the homeowner's expense and air seal underneath it, which is what should have been done in the first place. This is a really, really critical detail. So after we get to the air sealing and the insulation, both of which are cheap, both of which only need to be done one time, neither of which pulls any energy as it works, then we get to HVAC systems. And a lot of times you are misled by the utility companies, by the federal government saying, hey, we would like to give you a tax credit or some kind of a deduction for buying a new energy efficient furnace. Wouldn't you like to have a brand new shiny box in your basement that's a little quieter? Yes, but the bad thing is that if you don't take care of the air sealing and the insulation issues that are there first, if you're trying to solve a problem with this, like a problem of energy waste or a problem of comfort or room distribution or temperature variations around your house, and you just replace a box like a furnace or an air conditioner, you actually have done nothing. And that upsets me because that is a waste of taxpayer dollars, and it makes us think that we're doing something, and we're actually not. There are two systems in any home. So we got through the 4 elements, the 3 recommendations. The 2 systems that we're talking about are the enclosure, which is the air sealing and insulation. You can see a theme here. That's like the skin of your house. And the engines, and that's anything that moves heat or air. That includes water heating, that includes furnaces and air conditioners, and even exhaust fans and fireplaces and kitchen range hoods and all kinds of stuff like that. We'll get into this. There is only one goal of controlling these 4 elements, making the 3 recommendations, and getting at the 2 systems. And that goal, like I just said, is not energy efficiency. And I've mentioned it a few times before, it is in fact control. Control is what we're after. Just like the way people are monitoring their steps with a Fitbit, or monitoring their home temperatures with a fancy thermostat that hooks up to the internet, or monitoring their car's performance with a feedback digital display. They want to know that they have control, that nothing uncontrolled and unintended is happening. Americans want it the way they want it, and they are willing to pay for it. And this is something that all of us should pay attention to and really take advantage of, because this is our opportunity to make the world a better place, because people actually want this. They don't necessarily want energy efficiency. That is not on their list of shopping things to do. But what they do want is every room to be the same temperature. I want to walk around in my boxers all day long in front of the giant window walls for some reason. But if we control all of these elements, we have a high-performance house, and we're done. That's the happy news. Now, here are the opportunities for us. First of all, the metrics are going to give us proof of quality control. Now, this is something that manufacturing went through back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and in Japan even before that. Toyota, notably, has really taken on this quality control thing, and they have become the world leader in quality control. They have actually a system called the Toyota Production System. We need to take what they did to revolutionize the manufacturing processes, and it was very painful for them back in the day. We need to use that in the construction industry now to get metrics about what actually is happening so that we can improve these processes. Second thing is that homeowners get proof that they got what they paid for. They never have to wake up in the middle of the night sweating, thinking, I know that contractor screwed me somehow. I can't figure out how exactly, but I just have this bad feeling. Also, the contractors don't have to feel terrible about their clients because they have proof that they actually gave their client what they paid for and that they are better than their competition. Wouldn't everyone like that? How many builders, if you ask them, are awesome builders? 100% is the answer. How many drivers on the way to work this morning are excellent drivers? 100%, right? You cannot ask people's opinion about their own work or their own quality. What you need is a way to prove whether somebody is lying or doesn't have any idea what's going on or actually knows what they're doing. And if anybody says, hey, I do really good work, we build energy efficient homes, we build green homes, your next question should be, how exactly are you measuring that? What exactly do you mean by that? The last thing is that the conversation becomes more about quality. It's not a bottom of the barrel, let's take the cheapest bidder kind of conversation, and everybody is happier as a result. Yes, people are willing to pay more. Now, here is the thing. Everybody always says that. Are they? Well, I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. I don't think my clients generally always balk at the question about payment. And it's generally because we think that they're going to make decisions based on price. So here's the thing. They will pay more on the average of 10%. And this is from 3 studies that happened in California, in the Northwest, and also in North Carolina. They tested new homes, and they said, hey, would you be willing to buy someplace? And they didn't actually just ask. They actually clocked it. And if a home had a certification, which is generally always based in metrics, then people were willing to pay 10% more than homes that did not have their certifications. Also, if you think about any cars, think about Toyota and Lexus, right? As an example, if we're using cars. Same exact car, same chassis, same everything, except one of them is more expensive. And it's because they have this experience when you're in it of, ooh, luxury. It reminds me that my life is luxurious. This is what we want, okay? So that's what we're trying to get at is, let's find the button of what people will make a decision on and press it. So here is the thing that we need to know. And when I say real estate pros, I'm talking about anybody involved in real estate at all. And that includes me as a buyer, me as a seller. At some point, you're going to be involved in real estate. So the quiz number 1 is, a higher performance home is more blank than a conventional home. Dangerous or safe? Everyone just kind of think about what your choice would be. 3, 2, 1. It's in fact more dangerous. You would think that I would say, oh no, everything is great. Home performance is fantastic. Home performance is good, but only when we know what we're talking about. Now here's the thing. Your state will require a higher performance home, period. So the higher performance homes are coming regardless, because you have to do this kind of stuff. I will get into why in a moment. When you get proof through performance testing, and the state building codes are going to require minimal performance testing. Only one test basically is required in most states in a few years from now. This proof of quality control on a kind of broader scale is going to help prevent things like illnesses, like, for example, carbon monoxide poisoning. Did you know that carbon monoxide is odorless and tasteless? Did you also know that your carbon monoxide detector that you bought at a home improvement store for $15 does not do what you think it does? I would bet $100 to all of you that you have never read the actual instructions from inside of a carbon monoxide monitor. In that instructions, you will find out that it says, hey, by the way, if you're not a perfectly fit young adult, then who's not pregnant, ill, not a child, not an elderly person, and doesn't have any respiratory issues, then this thing is not going to work for you. Also, callbacks, right? Nobody wants to have somebody come back out to their house to fix something that they thought they already got fixed. The contractors want to get into the truck and go back out to the house, and we've got lawsuits, which are at the end of the line for that, and nobody wants to be in court. This is just totally avoidable. All of this stuff can be skipped. So here's the thing about the codes. All of us are saying, oh yeah, the energy codes are coming. The International Energy Conservation Code is called the IECC. Yes, these are coming, but the code is slang for the crappiest job that you are legally allowed to do before we fine you and throw you in jail. Okay? No one wants a code-built house when they actually understand what that means. And that is my job. My job is to explain to people what the sausage factory looks like. And I will be doing a very broad and deep version of that over the coming year. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, all the building codes are going to require performance testing of some type by 2017. This is a requirement of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. A bunch of money got dumped into the states. If you take the money, you have to prove 90% compliance with the 2009 International Energy Conservation Code by 2017. So all of your states, no matter where you are in the country, including Hawaii and Alaska, will require performance testing of some type. And this is bad news if none of the contractors in your area or none of the homeowners have ever heard of it, which is why we're also going on tour. So here's how the home performance professionals, which, by the way, home performance professionals, again, not energy efficiency specialists, they are simply experts in proving what is going on in a home. They are proving the metrics. And by the way, these are the cream of the crop of the construction industry. They can be in all of the different fields. So here's the thing. Number one, we get to planning and test in. This is before we do any of the actual work. Then when we do the work, we want to inspect it, make sure it's done right. Most of my job when I'm inspecting is finding oops moments. It's like, oh, I just forgot to take the tape off of that little flap, or oops, I forgot to fill that little hole. It's funny, there's no evil conspiracy trying to waste energy. It's literally just a bunch of people not doing stuff accidentally. And then at the end, we test out, is what it's called, but with performance testing, just to make sure that everything went as planned and that we have what we set out to do. You can get extra stuff like a HERS rating. And if you don't know what that is, that's a subject for another webinar. You can get the Energy Star Homes verification or another certification like NAHB Green or LEED for Homes or whatever it is. And you can also get the Builder Tax Credit verification. This is a $2,000 tax credit for builders. It's $2,000 per home. And in a multifamily building, 3 stories or less, that's a lot of money. If you build a 50-unit building, that's a lot. So you want to think about those kind of things and help to convince people to take these steps, because there's more in it than just a good feeling of like having changed the world. So when we get to step 1, planning and modeling, before we actually do the work, and this goes for whether you're planning a home improvement or planning a new home, first we want to know is, do the plans that we've got actually work? We want to have somebody sit down and actually think through everything. We want to get all the trades together and talk, and have the electrician say, well, I'm going to drill a hole through that. And the HVAC guy says, well, don't do that. Here, can we do this instead? Because that's going to screw up my work. Also, do we comply with the building code? That's something that's generally going to be done by the building officials in your municipality. However, in the state of Illinois, where I am originally from, we had 1,200 municipalities and 300 building offices. That means that most of the state actually doesn't have to comply with building code because there aren't people forcing them to. But just because it's not being enforced doesn't mean it's not a law. And also, lastly, how can they be improved? How can the plans be improved? Cost effectively is the most important thing, right? We don't want to just throw a bunch of, oh, like this would be better, let's add more insulation, or let's make the new windows. Let's make sure that the windows that we're adding actually do make sense and that we can't downgrade, save $1,000, and actually not cost us any money at all. And then, do we know what's going to happen? This is the main thing that I find the fear factor is when you haven't had your house tested, you just have no idea what the house is going to do. And it's totally avoidable. So here's my tiny lab. We are going to take this tiny house on wheels on tour in 2016 to several of the cities that are in the Georgetown University Energy Prize. And it's in rough-in stage right now. We just installed the windows over the weekend. We have all the insulation installed. I will be showing all kinds of videos at our video channel, which I'll show you at the end, so you can get to that. Now, when you build a model, you can do something like building a 3D model, which I did for this. And this is one way to look at it. An architect would generally do this. You can also get HVAC calculations and find out exactly what the sun is going to do to the house based on where my windows are located and where the roof is and all this stuff throughout the day. I can find out, ooh, at 5 o'clock p.m., I'm going to have a really big spike in that room. If I moved this window a little bit over to the other wall, it might get better. You can find out what the requirements are, what's actually sucking the energy out of the house, causing that heat bleed. And lastly, we can find out how much it's going to cost to run this place. And that's where we can start changing out, like, ooh, let's take away a little bit of insulation. That would save us $1,000. Let's see what it does to the cost. Oh, it doesn't actually, it costs us $7 more a year. That means that it would take, 100 years or whatever to make that money back. So you can see the series of the planning of the tiny lab on our video channel. I'm just showing you there are 4 different webinars. These are each half an hour apiece. Again, as you have questions, by the way, go ahead and keep typing them in, and I'll get to them at the end. So you can see all of that if you're interested. Now, inspection-wise, in the second process here, so this is while the work is happening. This thumbnail is from a video that I did where my life is a little bit crazy when I'm on site in the middle of a construction site, because there are just so many duh moments that you find. So the 2 things that you're inspecting for are the enclosure, which is the air sealing insulation, and the HVAC, right? This is a theme. This is very actually easy once you get into it. So the enclosure and the HVAC, or anything that moves heat and air, the engines, all that stuff really, really important to double check. And there are other things as well, like the framing, like the plumbing, things like that. And generally, those are the things that are covered by an inspector, a building official. Those people generally are caring about life and death issues, or flooding, or things that are going to tear the house down. But they're not necessarily caring too much or even know very much about air sealing, insulation, ductwork, and equipment efficiencies. So this is why you need an extra person who has this training to be able to do this stuff. So when we're all done, we have the performance testing. And this is me standing next to a giant stack of my testing fans. You're going to test several things. The blower door, the infrared thermal imager can be used. There's something called zonal pressure testing, which is a super sexy test, and I have a demo on that on my video channel as well. So those are the tests of the envelope. Then we're going to test the HVAC, you guessed it. Duct tightness testing. That is the test that is going to be required in every single state within the next couple of years. So every single HVAC contractor around the country is going to be complaining very soon, we've been building ducts for 20, 40 years, 60 years, and we've never had to seal them up. And my answer generally to that is, well, what did you think that you were building? The plumbing for air is basically what ducts are. And if you want the plumbing leaking out all over the place, then don't seal it. If you want the plumbing for air leaking out all over the place, don't seal it. You want something done right, do it the right way. So just because we haven't done this before doesn't mean it's not a good thing now. By the way, this is not a fad. It's not going away. It's because we've been building houses more and more airtight and more insulated, and we're causing these things to start changing. We are going to be causing problems, which makes those houses more dangerous, like we talked about before. So the contractor then complains, why are you doing this? Like, why do I have to change my business model? I'm perfectly fine. I have hardly made any money over the last 50 years, and I have a really hard job. Why do I have to do extra work now? So here's the goal. Performance testing is for either obsessing over stupid details that don't matter, pissing people off unnecessarily, or making sure that the job got done right or not. And as you can probably guess, bam, that's what it's all about, okay? So we need to remember that that is the goal. It's about quality control, because there are literally so many dull moments. And I know, because I'm a piano player for ballerinas, that I'm pretty new in this field. There should be no reason that I know more than people who've been doing this for 50 years. So our two main systems that we are going to be proving are the enclosure and the engines. Again, this is the skin and the circulatory system of your house. So when we prove the envelope, and you can call this also the enclosure, this is a picture of a blower door. When you have done the air seal inspection with the insulation inspection, you then do the blower door test. And the blower door test means that you are creating a tight, temperature-controlled house. It means you're not going to have drafts where you don't want them. It means that you're not going to have weird fluctuations in temperature when you go upstairs, downstairs, to one room or another. All that stuff is very, very important to an actual occupant. Now, this is a picture that's from the Department of Energy. You may have seen this. What this means, though, when you look at it at first blush, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's air leakage all over the place. I want you to notice two things. Number one, there are orange arrows at the top going out. There are blue arrows at the bottom coming in. What that is about is stack effect. Warm air rises is the most basic way that we could put it. When that happens, because we have turned on the furnace, we have a high pressure system in the top of the house and a low pressure system in the bottom of the house. So when I am cold in the basement, it's because drafts are coming in. But it's not because the basement is the problem. The problem is actually the attic floor, because no air can come in if no air leaves. So the most important place in this entire picture is the floor of the attic. That's why people coming along and adding insulation in the attic without doing the air sealing is totally insane, because it makes more work later when you have to go back and air seal it anyway. It lowers the temperature in the attic, which makes it more likely to have mold and mildew and rot up there. And it's potentially taking taxpayer dollars and using them to incentivize this stuff, which is totally strange. So what we need to actually do is air seal all this stuff. Here's a picture of an attic floor. And if you haven't been in your attic, you need to go up there today. This is looking down. That is a recessed light, which is also called a can light. These things are notoriously leaky. So that is an air leakage spot. And this is another air leakage spot. You don't even know that this exists, most likely. That's called a top plate. Top plate is the top of every interior wall, and exterior wall as well, but generally the interior ones are the sneaky ones. These are just little gaps. They're literally so thin that I could just stick my fingernail into it. But remember, because of that stack effect picture, that air is constantly pressing up today where you are, trying desperately to get out of the top of your house. When that happens, your house needs air, and it sucks in air at all these places that you feel a draft and that you think are the actual problems, when actually the problem started in the attic floor at this weird, obscure little spot. This is what it looks like when you run a blower door and you have an infrared inspection. By the way, please, everyone, don't hire anyone to come into your house with an infrared camera and not a blower door, because you need both of them at the same time to really take good infrared pictures of air leakage. I always make sure if somebody hires me just with an infrared camera, I let them know, hey, I'm not going to find generally any air leakage in the most important spot, which is at the top, because all the air is leaving the house there, and I'm not going to be able to see any of that with this thermal camera. So this is a picture of air leakage happening in a top plate cavity right in that wall, and the thermostat is mounted on that wall. Think about where your thermostat is mounted and whether the thermostat is actually telling you the truth or not about the condition of the interior space. Because if it's mounted on a wall that's like an exterior wall, or a wall that's got the sun shining on it, or a wall where there's a vent blowing on it, for example, then you have a problem, because the thing thinks it's a different temperature than it actually is. Same thing can happen in the summertime when lots of heat gets sucked into the top plates of the walls, because a lot of the air conditioning is falling out at the bottom, and the air conditioner kicks on because the thermostat told it, oh, it's so hot in here, but really it's the wall cavity that's hot. This is how totally weird this stuff is. When you really get up into the attic, you'll see. Plumbing walls are double wide because they have to take plumbing, which is generally kind of a wide process. So that means you get generally twice as much air leakage, and you've got these giant holes in the top. Again, if you haven't been into an attic, you need to go explore yourself to see how this stuff works. This is one of my favorite attics that I've ever been in. This was a state senator who hired us, very, very nice lady, who thought that they needed geothermal, and which, by the way, would have gotten a tax credit from the federal government and probably from the state government. It would have been a total waste of money because they would have needed so much geothermal, and this cost $30,000 to $50,000 to install, that they would have just been having all this bleed through their roof the entire time because their attic is such a mess. Here's an example of their chimney. A lot of people think that the chimney needs to breathe. It's actually not true. And again, the contractors in your area who know how to prove this stuff can tell you exactly what needs to be done. This is only an hour-long webinar that we're doing here today, so we can't go over everything, but that's how it should look. And there are contractors everywhere across the country who know how to deliver this stuff, and your job is to find them. These are brand new walls in a brand new house. Now, I am building a brand new house. It is a tiny house. There are only 4 walls, but I've never built a house before, and my house looks better than this. I used to play piano for ballerinas, and I am beating whoever built this house. Now, the thing about this is that it's both the builder's fault, the subcontractor's fault, and the home buyer's fault, because the home buyers generally say, I want the cheapest price possible. And the builder says, well, that means that you can't. And they say, I don't want any guff from you. I want it cheap. And so this is what we end up with, is total not working poopy. So this is totally avoidable. Now, the things that you need to understand about insulation is that there's only 2 types. We've gone through air sealing, right? We understand air sealing is very important. The second step that we need to always take is the insulation. This is before we deal with furnaces. Insulation is very simple. There is fibrous, which is made of either fiber particles or cellulose or denim, anything that's a fiber that's woven into like a blanket or kind of blown in a big heap. All that stuff is exactly the same. It's R3 to R4 per inch. We're going to be nice and say R4, just round up. And then we have foam. And that's either R4, R5, or R7 per inch, and it can be sprayed or it can be rigid boards. That's it. That's all of insulation in a nutshell. There are not 100 different types of insulation. There are 2. So you want to think closely about which type you need, and not everybody needs spray foam. In fact, I am building my house and I have no spray foam in my house because I know what it takes to actually do a good job with spray foam, and it's not as easy as you would think. So again, paying the bottom dollar for that stuff, very dangerous. Here's what insulation is going to do. Now, there is some math that I'm about to show you. You do not need to memorize this math. I just want you to know that there is math. Most insulation contractors do not know that there is math, and they have never seen this equation. But what this equation means is that all insulation is good as long as it's installed the right way. This is critical. Anything that's an installed product, just because you buy it off the shelf and it's nice and shiny when it's there, doesn't mean it's actually going to do what it says on the label. And that goes for literally anything in your house, because the home is a system. Everything in the house is interacting with everything else in the house. Some of them less important than others, but everything is having these little kind of side effects and byproducts. So let's say that we're going to take this attic, which is not up to date. We're tearing up the floorboards. We're going to take out some of the rat doo-doo, and we're going to replace the insulation with R49. We have 1,000 square feet of attic floor space. I'm going to do 99% of it perfect to R49, which is the code in many places that are cold climates. That's about 14 inches of fibrous insulation, right? But I'm going to do 1% not insulated. If you can think about what that 10 square foot area in every single attic is, you get a prize. Hopefully somebody had a light bulb go off. That is your attic hatch or your attic ladder. And if it's not in the garage and it's in the top floor of your house, then that means that it's probably not insulated. It's also probably not air sealed, and that's another issue, but we're talking about insulation right now. Now here's the thing. We do a 99% perfect job, but we miss 1%, just that little 10 square foot area out of 1,000 square feet. Here is what happens. You put in R49, you put in no insulation for 1% of it, and it degrades the total assembly value of what that insulation is doing overall by 30%. That means that if you got a price from somebody who said, I'm going to do it 100% perfect, and it's going to cost $10,000, and somebody else said, oh, we do it, we're great, we do 99% perfect, like I promised. It might be a little bit messy, but it's like 99% perfect, and I'll give you $2,000 lower than the other guy. Really, what he should have offered you is a 30% discount, because he actually only gave you 66% or whatever it is of the actual quality of 100% perfect. Okay, so this is a big deal. This is not a linear scale, it's logarithmic, meaning it's exponentially decreasing in value. So here is my very nice master bathroom in the top floor of my house, which is the hottest, moistest part of my entire house. It's got a steam shower in it because I love steam showers. And this is what it looks like when I flash an infrared camera on it. Again, you can't tell any of this stuff without diagnostic tools. So that's why the diagnostics are the key. Performance testing is the whole thing. Your neighbors are going to be willing to pay for 100% perfect when they figure out that anything less than 100% is basically crap. So this is my goal is to show everyone the sausage factory that is construction and home improvements. And say, hey, just so you know, in case you're not getting proof of what's going on, you're probably not getting anything close to what you think. Once people understand, they are willing to pay. So here's a picture of duct sealing problems. This is not unusual. I go into people's houses all the time and I find that there is some duct insulation, but not a lot. And as we know, 1% deficiency in the insulation means a drop of 30%. Guess what this giant uninsulated portion of the ductwork actually means? By the way heat flows, just for those of you who are interested, a little bit of a digression, heat flows from where it's hottest to where it's coldest. So the hotter something is next to something that's colder, like for example, a hot duct that's carrying hot furnace air through a cold attic, that's going to be the most heat transfer in your entire house. All of the heat bleed that's happening that's really significant is happening in the attic between this duct and that attic. That means that potentially we should actually care about insulating the ducts in the attic and air sealing them way before we care about insulating the walls of the house. Here's what it looks like. You might have seen some spotting on your drywall or some staining on your register plate. That is because of condensation. So this is the kind of thing that leads to. And again, you can totally take care of this and avoid it if you actually prove stuff. So when we get to the HVAC, we dealt with the envelope. Now we're dealing with the HVAC. First of all, you need to make sure that it's right-sized. This is called a manual J calculation. There are actual engineering calculations for finding out how big the furnace or air conditioning should be. And by the way, I'd like to draw your attention right now to the handouts that are in your the sidebar there. So you're welcome to download both of those. One of them is an ebook that's 24 pages long. It's called Proof is Possible, and it talks about all this stuff way more in depth and shows you examples that are not in this presentation. And then also the tiny lab specifications. So you're welcome to download both of those and peruse while we're doing this or after. The ductwork also needs to be calculated and engineered to deliver the right air. Now here's a little bit of a problem. A lot of people who install ductwork aren't computer people. They're just not very comfortable with math and with computers. So that's why we need to have this broader conversation and get people to expect it and ask for it. We get engineers involved or people who are comfortable sitting in front of computers doing calculations, and then everybody's happy. We need to make sure that the fresh air ventilation, which is also going to be part of code in every state in 2017, is sized properly, because too much fresh air is an energy penalty and we don't need it. Too little fresh air is not going to be delivering what we need. It's going to be stale. You're going to be able to smell the things like the fireplace or things like that. Not going to be good. We need to make sure that it's tested airtight, meaning the ducts are airtight, because again, they're plumbing for air, and that they're delivering the right amount of heating and cooling to the rooms that we engineered them to in the very beginning with this right sizing calculation. So all of that stuff is totally doable. And again, you have people in your cities that are perfectly capable of doing all of those verifications. And that is how you prove that you actually got what you paid for. So this is an example of the right sizing issue. What we're doing is going around and finding out that every house has too much heating, too much cooling. Too much heating is less of a problem, but it's still a little, it's just silly to pay for more machine than you really need. It's not like buying more hot dogs than you think you'll need for a party. It's like buying shoes that are way too big for you. They're going to be uncomfortable, they're going to give you blisters. Also, you're going to get moisture and air quality problems from this. And just real quick, I'd like to show you what an air conditioning system actually looks like. You have the thing on the outside that makes the noise. It goes, and there's a fan that starts up and it blows air up and moves the leaves on the trees above it. That is your compressor and condenser side. And then the thing inside that is next to your furnace is called the evaporator coil. And all we have is two things that I would just like to draw your attention to. There's a refrigerant line. It's a loop, goes outside, comes back inside, goes outside, comes back inside. That's the red thing. And we have two fans, one on the outside, one on the inside. You can hear both of them if you stand next to them. This is how simple this stuff is. Now, generally, people are not realizing that HVAC technicians are not trained and equipped to test things like airflow. Airflow is critically important in this case. What they're going to do is come out and plug in a couple of pressure gauges and test the air conditioning refrigerant line for pressure. But that doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story. So that's why, again, the diagnostics are really simple. And again, there are contractors who know how to do this in your neighborhood. Now, here's a myth. Everybody's going to say, oh, but you want the house to breathe a little bit. We don't want it too tight. That's totally ridiculous. Again, that's a total myth. Do not believe it when people say that, because there is no such thing as a house that is too tight. My house is going to be so tight that people are not going to even believe it when I'm done. What we need to remember to do is build tight and then also ventilate right. So let's talk about ventilation for a second. This is the most excellent way to do it. Everybody in Canada, everybody in Europe is doing it this way. This is called a heat recovery ventilator or an energy recovery ventilator. This is a very small system that's just bringing in something like 100 CFM. To give you an idea, a 2-ton air conditioner, if that's what you have in your house, would deliver 800 CFM. So you really need something that's an eighth the size of your ducts, just to be very, very generalized about it. Now this is going to take the stale air from your house and put it outside, and bring fresh air from outside and put it inside. And on the way, it's brushing it up against each other so that it exchanges the conditioning, so that you're not paying twice to heat that air. Once your house is tight enough, which your house is going to be in every state because you're going to have to start dealing with these performance codes that are coming down the line, you get energy savings. If you're not really airtight, this is kind of a waste of money. So you need to make sure that you're doing things in the right order. So remember that the goal is always control, not energy efficiency. And the only way to demonstrate that is through performance testing. That's why I do performance testing. That's why I talk about it all day long. That's my entire goal. So if you'd like to learn more, if you'd like to see how this stuff works and see some cool, sexy videos about infrared testing and how to do a lot of things around your house and in your neighbors' houses, this channel has over 100 videos in it. My wife is a film producer, so we're really serious about our movie making. We're going to be making a television show next year called Home Diagnosis. Please stay tuned for that. But you can get to that through youtube.com/C as in channel /home performance. You can also listen to over 75 episodes of my radio show, which is called the Building Performance Podcast. And this is an interview show where I interview people who are awesome at this stuff, ask them a bunch of questions. It's my way of learning. And we're going to be coming to these 20 cities for the Proof is Possible tour. This is where we're taking the Tiny Lab. We're going to go on tour. We're going to show normal homeowners and contractors exactly what they should be demanding from their diagnostics so that we can set a new standard for home improvements and for construction. So if your city is on this map, please come out and visit us when we're there. We're going to be sponsored by these companies that are here. So we've got boots on the ground. These local contractors, for the most part it's local contractors, are going to be available for your questions after we leave. And our goal is to just really make an impact in all of these cities when we're done. So remember, ask for the testing. Make sure that you get proof that everything is happening the way that you're thinking, because there's so many ways for it to go wrong. And now I will take questions. All right. Robin says, building tax credit is applicable to multifamily? Yes, it is. We do it all the time. So it is, you have to be 50% better than code, or the baseline. The baseline is 2006 International Residential Code, IRC. And it's up to 3 stories. And literally, I mean, if you build a 100-unit building, $2,000 a pop, that's $200,000 tax credit for the builder. There are a couple catches. You need to sell or lease the properties within the year after you finish them. They need to be rated by a HERS rater or somebody that can do that calculation and run that software. So it's something that you should really pay attention to. She says, not poopy. Robin, thank you for liking my use of the word poopy. I've been trying to watch my language lately. I think it's working for me. Who else has questions? I am out of questions here, but I'm happy to take more if anybody has specific things that they'd like to talk about, within your own home even. So I would like to talk for a minute while I'm waiting for people to type in questions. Georgetown University Energy Prize. Our sponsorship is for the winning city we're going to be giving a bunch of training to contractors. So we're going to be giving some of the books, some BPI exam prep and Rater exam prep courses, which are the kind of two major certifications for this kind of work. BPI stands for Building Performance Institute. You can go to bpi.org for that. And then the other one is HERS Raters, and that stands for Home Energy Rating System. And that is run by ResNet, and that is at resnet.us. So when you go to those, you can find people who are certified to do this kind of work. And again, you can contact me if you're looking for somebody in a specific area. And I hope that you will compete harder to win that prize. Because we also have a fall fast track, which is my 6-week mastermind course to turn people from simple home performance professionals into black belts. And in my opinion, we need at least one black belt in every major municipal area, because I get called all the time for these kind of more advanced, weird jobs where people are smelling their chimney or they have weird condensation issues that they can't figure out. So that's generally, we want everybody to be doing some simple testing, but then in general, you need somebody who's able to do the more advanced testing. So let's see here. Jackie says, we're trying to think of ways to encourage investments in rental properties where renters pay the utilities, including a trained volunteer effort to insulate attics. Good idea? Terrible idea? Great question, Jackie. Thank you very much for asking. So, volunteers. I'm going to talk for a minute. I have less experience with volunteers in general. What I do have experience with is I was involved in some of the training, the ARA training for like green jobs back in 2009, 2010, 2011. And that doesn't work super well because in the first place, you really need at least one person who's a ninja, who knows how to do the testing. So you would need some kind of a supervisor there to really direct things and use the diagnostics. Second thing is that this stuff is not fun to do. Being in an attic and insulating it, if you've ever done it, is horrible. It's the worst thing ever. So just be cognizant of that. Generally, people want to get out of there as fast as possible. If they're being paid quite a lot of money, then they'll stick around and do what they need to do, especially if they're being held accountable for their work. So what I would say is that having renters pay the utilities is cool, but because there's a thing called a split incentive, which means that there's somebody who owns the property, somebody who rents the property. If those two people have different incentives for it, and you might already know this, Jackie, I apologize if you are already on this, then that means that neither of them is really willing to pay for the upfront cost of improvements. The owner doesn't care about the utility bills, especially if the renter's paying, right? That's especially where they don't care. And the renter doesn't care because they might leave next year, and they're not going to spend $5,000 fixing up the entire place. So I would say that's not my favorite idea. And in general, my goal around the country with the Proof is Possible tour, with the Home Diagnosis television show, is to convince people to buy this stuff on the private market, to really invest their own money for it, so that they can get what they're wanting for the right price, the price that's actually fair. And generally free is, I think it sends the wrong message. Keith says, are you open to adding a city to your tour? No, we are not. Thank you very much for asking, though, Keith. Yeah, the tour was set in stone. What happened is that there are city sponsors in each city. They put up $3,000 to bring us to that city, and we're going to spend a week in each place. So that campaign ended right before Thanksgiving, and we actually were going to have a 16-city tour, and all of a sudden at the end there was a rush, and we ended up having 20 cities instead. So that was kind of amazing. But thank you very much for asking. Robin says, great, is there any info on the training courses? Yes, you can visit my website, which is buildingperformanceworkshop.com, to get more info on my training courses, and I've got all kinds of different stuff. What I'd say first is, if you've got people who are interested, get into my training portal, which is an online thing where you can see all my webinars and videos and stuff like that. And then there are kind of staged trainings at that point. So you can also find out about who's training in your area. Again, I'm just going to say, just because this is my platform and I get to do it, that free trainings are generally total failures. So if you have the opportunity to put on a free training, like a week-long or a 6-week free training, please don't do that. It's not going to work. I've presented 6-day courses for people who are paying no money and for people who are paying $2,500 a piece. And the difference in how serious they take it is night and day. generally the people who pay for it really follow through on it, right? As you can imagine. So you pay for what you get what you pay for. I think in general, try to avoid free hosting it or putting it on or attending it, because it's just not going to be as, you really want to make sure that everything is taken seriously, especially because we're considering that we're making homes more dangerous. Remember that. That was the first quiz that we took. A home that's higher performance is going to be more dangerous. You have the potential of potentially backdrafting carbon monoxide. You have the potential of backdrafting what's in the chimney, which is gross and causes soot stains and stuff like that. You can backdraft the flames in the water heater and actually set things on fire, because we have giant range hoods over really nice Viking kitchen stoves. We have people having 3 or 4 wood-burning fireplaces in their house. We have people having 2 or 3 dryers in their house. All this stuff is really adding up. And as we get more and more obsessed with appliances and adding more gadgets to our homes, it makes it more and more sensitive. So just be very, very careful that people are doing this stuff the right way and that they're taking it really seriously. Allison says, how do you answer people who insist on savings to investment ratios? That's an awesome question. Thank you. Savings to investment ratios. Okay, this is a thing that happens in the public programs. This is a weatherization program or a utility-funded energy rebate program thing. And it's due to the thing called the TRC, Total Resource Cost. This is a giant book that somebody, a bunch of people on a committee, came up with how worth it certain things are. Now, here's the thing. Let's get back to the very beginning of our conversation. We talked about the fact that we're not talking about energy efficiency, right? That there are 2 things that are on my list of 4 elements that are way more important than energy efficiency, and that includes moisture and air quality. The TRC has no consideration for moisture or for air quality. So any benefits that you get out of that. And by the way, there was a study in New Zealand that is referred to in one of my interviews on the Building Performance podcast, and the interviewee was Larry Zarker, who is the head of BPI, the Building Performance Institute that I mentioned a minute ago. And this study was about the medical impacts of retrofitting older homes with air sealing, insulation, and mechanical systems. And what they found was that the medical benefits of doing this work on homes far exceeds, it in fact completely eclipses the energy efficiency benefits. So any conversation about whether the energy is going to pay back over a number of years is, in my opinion, completely beside the point. It's just words. That's why I don't work with public programs anymore, ever. I only work in the private market because I want to be talking to people about stuff that actually matters, which is whether your family is healthy, whether you're happy living in your house, and how durable it is and all that stuff. And all of that is aside from the TRC and the savings to investment ratio. So I don't deal with savings to investment ratios ever. I told people who are my clients to avoid even looking at them. So that's my feeling about it. Obviously, I have very strong opinions about this stuff when we start talking about it, but I think that's where the public programs are really going wrong. That's why the Proof is Possible Tour exists. That's why we're going out. Me and my wife, our Building Performance Workshop is me and my wife. It's a tiny company. So we're going out and doing this national tour, making this television show without any official sanctioning from any major organization for this exact reason, because people are having a conversation about this, but it's exactly about the wrong side of the issue. We're talking about energy efficiency, and it's just not about that. All right, so it is 2:55. We have 5 minutes left. I'm happy to call it early if you guys are happy, but if anybody has any more questions, I will be happy to answer them. All right. Looks like everybody's happy. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Please do visit the website, visit the video channel. If you'd like to see more about the Tiny Lab testing process and the building process, you can subscribe to that YouTube channel. Super easy. I have an email list. You can subscribe on the front page of my website. I will never spam you, I promise. And so please keep in touch if you have any questions about the Georgetown University Energy Prize and our sponsorship of it. Thank you again to GUEP for putting this together, and I hope that everybody has a fantastic rest of your week.